Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Artesprix, and in today's video we are going to create some sublimation bookmarks using the Artesprix bookmarks. I'm going to go through the supplies here, but I'm also going to be featuring a new product, or fairly new product, from Artesprix, which is the Artesprix Sublimation Coloring Books. These are pre-printed pages that are sublimation ink. So if you see this black ink, it is sublimation ink. It will transfer to your design. The key here is that when you are working with text, your text has to be mirrored because it is an image transfer. So a lot of us find that writing backwards, it can be difficult. There are a few tricks, and we've shown those in some of the past YouTube videos. So make sure to check out those on the Artesprix YouTube channel as well. But they have these really neat templates that you can simply color in. You can also leave them blank, and it would just be the black outline. So we're going to work with that. So I'm going to run through the supplies that I'm going to use. Make sure to take these ideas and add your own spin to it. Use your products that you have, the markers, the sublimation ink pads, the ink refills, or I will be working with the Artesprix sublimation paints today. So let's take a look at all of the supplies that you'll need for today's project. The main product for this, we're going to be working with the bookmarks, but you can also use these ideas with any sublimation blank, and the links are in the video description below for all of these supplies, so make sure to check those out. So I have my Artesprix sublimation bookmarks. They come 4 to a packet. I have 2 different sublimation coloring books here. We have the script or we have the print. They each have little differences in the text that they're working with. I also have the Artesprix. I've printed this off. I'll make sure to link that in the video description below. But you also have a paint color mixing chart that gives you some ideas on how you can get some different colors with the Artesprix paints that they currently have. So we have all the paints out here. And then I'm going to be using plain, ordinary copy paper. You can also use mixed media paper since you're working with a more liquid with the paint. Mixed media paper also works as well. I simply have a higher quality copy paper here, and I'm going to be using that. Then I'm also going to be using what's called a gel plate. We're going to be making a background, and I just have a roller for that. Don't worry about the existing paint or anything that's on your roller. I also have my Artesprix protective mat. This is one of my most prized possessions in my studio. I have both sizes. This is going to be helpful because these Artesprix bookmarks are metal. They are going to be extremely hot when we bring them out of the press because they are pressed at 400 degrees for 45 seconds. So be extremely careful when you are removing those. And I use that Artesprix protective mat to protect my work surface so that that heat does not affect my wood table or any other surface that you're using. I also have some heat safe gloves here. If you feel you need to use those, make sure to do that. Just don't touch that hot metal. And then Artesprix heat tape. This is specialized tape that withstands the high heat of 400 degrees for your sublimation blanks. And then one of the most important parts is your protective paper. You want to protect the surface of your heat source, both on the top and the bottom. The sublimation ink is an ink transfer, as I mentioned before. That means that any ink or any gases that come out when that ink is turned into the gas with the high heat and pressure, if that gets out on your press, that will leave a stain on your press on your bottom or top platen that could transfer to your next blank. So we protect it with this siliconized protective paper that is made by Artesprix. This is the stuff the pros use. Pencil does not transfer to your sublimation blank, so it is great for making your templates and getting an idea of where you want your design. Basic pair of scissors, and I do have a silicone mat on my workspace to protect it. I also have a little dish here with some water and a paintbrush. I'm going to be working with the paints, and I'm going to be working with this Artesprix lightning medium. This is not white paint. There is no white sublimation ink. White, if you wanted to show up white, you would simply leave your sublimation blank, blank. You would leave that area on your blank empty. That will show the white of your sublimation blank through. This is a lightning medium. So I know some of these colors can be a bit dark, such as the blue. I'm going to take that and I'm going to add a little bit of the lightning medium to give it a little bit more of a variance in the colors. And then you need a heat source. The heat source, you want high temperature of 400 degrees. We're going to be pressing this for 45 seconds, and you want the pressure to be firm. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So the first thing I'm going to start with is my gel plate, because that's going to take some time to dry for the background. You don't want to have the wet paint touch your sublimation blanks. So I'm just going to set this aside. I'm going to peel off my protective covers on my gel plate. This is a really cool, if you've never worked with one of these are really, really neat. It's it's like gelatin is what it is. So I'm just going to set this down. It may be difficult to see on the camera. Hopefully you can see that. And then what you can do, you can work either direction. This is about the size, this is an 8 by 10, so it's about the size of a letter size sheet of paper. So we can make quite a few backgrounds. So don't throw away any of your excess. You keep your excess prints that you make. You can always use those for a future project. We're simply going to start out, and I am just going to add some paint to this, have fun with it, play around with it. Every print can be different. And grab some extra sheets of copy paper, because it's simply just copy paper. Make several prints at one time, see which ones you like the best, and go from there. So I'm just going to add some paint here. Remember, less is more, and that's probably too much. But I'm going to just add a little bit of paint here. So I'll speed this up just a bit. And I don't really have a method to this. I'm just adding colors. Keep in mind your color mixing and what colors make dirt, that kind of thing. That's what you want to, I mean, if you want to make brown, you can definitely make brown. There's also brown paint. So I'm going to add some more colors to this, and then we will move on to the next step. Now, once you have your colors, let's start with this. We'll see what happens. I have been told by some very talented jelly plate artists that don't worry about if you have excess paint, you have excess, even if it's stuck and it's textured on there, or I had some of my dried paint drop on there, I'm not going to worry about it. Some of it landed in there. It actually gives it like a texture, a unique look, and it can make everything just interesting. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll this out. We're going to see what happens. And I have little bits in here and everything. So I'm going to set this aside. I can do a second roll on this. I'll show you that here in just a second. Once you get started with these jelly plates, it's really hard to stop, but I have quite a different selection here on, because I did move my roller around. You can position it. You do want to go kind of fast or your ink can dry. It's starting to dry out here. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do a first, it's called a pull. So I'm going to set it on one side. I'm going to smooth this down. You can see already my sublimation paints were ready to go. They were ready to play today. And the other thing, I'm going to actually grab my sublimation markers so we can work with those sublimation coloring books. You could also just simply use the paints to color in those letters if you want. So I do have some, actually it looks like I'm going to get 2 pulls off of this. I can roll that out again. I have some different mixes here. I have a little bit of mud here at the bottom, it looks like. And remember that those colors are going to brighten up as they dry. So I'm going to set this aside. While things are drying, I can also go ahead and do some more pulls. It's hard to tell with the, I think it's going to be pretty muddy, but you never know until you try. Because it's a black roller, it's hard to tell. So I'm going to do one more pull here. And to get it all up, sometimes you can wait for it to dry a little bit longer before you go to pull it. So you can see that each one of these gives a little bit different look. And you can just keep going. It's just copy paper. Keep going until you have what you want. So while those are drying, I'm going to do a little bit more coloring, and I'm going to see what I can come up with and maybe get a little bit better definition with my colors. So we'll come back here in just a second. Mix and match and play around with different color combinations to see what you can create. I really liked these second pulls that I did with a little bit different colors in here. And each one is unique and different. It's very difficult to create the same background design with a jelly plate twice. You can definitely try, but each one just has a unique look to it. So less is more when you come into the paints, and it just takes a little bit of practice. Keep those extra pulls, and then make sure to clean off your gel plate from your Artesprix inks, any of the sublimation inks. Now, while your prints are drying, I can still see that there's a little bit that needs to dry here. These are my second pulls, and I really like this. Here's my first ones. It's actually a pretty rainbow. There's a little bit of mud down there in the bottom. That's because I moved my roller around. So here's another look at it. I still keep these because I can use them for other projects. And so I have a whole stack, and see, those aren't dry yet. I have a whole stack of the scraps or the extras that I do. Even with this is just the roller on the paper itself, and that gives a unique background as well. So make sure to keep all of those. So I'm just gonna set these aside. While that is drying, you can go ahead and pull out, I put my Artesprix Sublimation Markers. I did forget this at the beginning of the supply list. You could either use the paints on your sublimation coloring book images, or you could grab the sublimation markers and you could use those to color them in. So we're going to be working with these. I'm going to set these aside and let those dry completely before I even decide which ones I will be using. So grab the sublimation coloring book, and you want to keep in mind how long your design is. These sublimation coloring books, so I have 2 of them right here, but there are other designs. They'll be linked down in the video description below. So I have script, and then I have print here, and it just depends on what look you're going for. But there are a variety of text font styles as well as sizes in here. So you want to choose a size that's going to be work well for whatever you want to put onto your design. So we are going to be using a process that is typically not recommended in sublimation. We're actually going to be doing 2 presses. So we're going to press the background onto the bookmark. We're going to let that cool, and then we're going to add and customize it with some text. So what I want to do first is I'm going to figure out which ones I want to use. I think this is going to work. And I want to use I'm going to cut out the letters that I would like to use, and then I'm going to color them in with the Artesprix Sublimation Markers. So let me cut these out real quick. I simply just started cutting out the letters that I was going to use. You can disassemble these coloring books by sliding the black edge binder off of the left edge of the book, and then you'll have individual pages. Take some detail scissors and just trim around those letters. Now we're going to go ahead and color them. When we go to press them, the biggest thing you want to do is you want to make sure that they're going to read correctly. So if, for instance, if you put your E backwards, you would definitely notice that. So what you can do is you can actually just flip this over to make sure that it's going to transfer correctly. You can kind of see through it, and then make sure that all of your letters are going to line up. And I'm just going to line these up in this order so that I kind of have an idea. The same over here. Now the only one here, your F you could get backwards. So you do want to make sure on that. So you just flip it over and you can kind of see that. So you want to make sure that it's going to, when you look through it, it's going to read correctly. So with the N as well. So I'm just going to color these in. Place your markers tip down for about 20 minutes to get the ink flowing for best results. Now the hardest part might be deciding which print or which pull you want to use. I think I'm going to go with this one for right now. Keep in mind that whatever colors you put on top of another color, that's going to affect what your final color results are. The same concepts go for mixing paints as well as when you are putting colors together on top of each other. Like I said before, we are going to be doing a second press with this. Since we have this sort of mixed color background, it's not going to be as noticeable if it does change the colors just a little bit, but you do want to make sure to protect your press with the Artesprix protective paper. So we are going to press first on the background. So I'm going to open these up. And there are 4 to a package here. And the white side is your sublimation side. So you can then choose, let's just move these out of the way a little bit. And I think I'm going to go with this print. So you can then choose where you want it to go. Do you want it to, and you don't necessarily even need to go with the grain of the paint. You could put, let's put one right here. And if you wanted to, you could use your pencil to trace around it so you can see exactly where that design is going to be. Now I am using the text here, but you could also, so I'm going to put the text down in this area. That's my plan at least. You could also put a design up here in the top area as well, or you can simply leave it as the background here. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and let's just cut this one out. And I can do multiple backgrounds at the same time, anything that's going to fit on the surface of my press. So here, let's just cut this down a little bit. Not completely necessary. And then anything, this has very little, but anything that's white on your background is going to remain white, which can give it a unique look. So I'm just going to grab my Artesprix heat tape here. I'm going to position my blank in about the same area, and then I'm going to secure that with some heat tape. And this is specialized heat tape. It's not going to melt at the 400 degrees. If you're using some other kind of tape, like Scotch tape, that could melt in your press and create quite a mess. So I just want to make sure this is secured very well. You don't want any air or any space between your blank and your sublimation print when you press it, or you can end up with what's called ghosting, which is where the gases are trapped, but they have nowhere to really go, and so it just kind of blurs. So there's the first one that's going to be for this design. And then we can decide what we want to do on this. There's quite a bit of area here that we can work with, and it could depend on what your colors of your design are. I simply colored this one. I grabbed a black sublimation marker and I colored those in black, so it should pop. I think I'm going to put this one over here, and let's go ahead and just draw around it and then I can cut it down the best. When you cut it down, just give yourself some space to add in the heat tape so you have something to secure it to. And as I mentioned before, I keep all of my scraps. So even this little scrap right here, you could fit a sublimation jewelry pendant. You could fit a sublimation charm. Make sure to check out the YouTube channel for additional tips on that. You have a section here that you can use for different sublimation blanks. So there's lots you can do with your scraps too. So just make sure that this is clean. We're going to attach this and secure it with some heat tape here. And then, so this is going to be our first press. So I'm going to grab some sublimation protective paper, and I already know that I'm going to end up with ink that transfers onto this protective paper, so I do not want to reuse it. I'm going to create what's called a sublimation sandwich. So I'm going to, or a sublimation taco in this case, I'm going to place these two blanks. Let's place them down here. You want to make sure to have enough to cover your workspace for any blowout that's going to happen with your sublimation ink. So I can just trim this down to about here. And then on this one, I can also trim this about here, and I can use this maybe for the next one. So I have both of these. You're going to place your protective paper on the bottom. Your sublimation blank is next, and then your sublimation print is on the top here. You want the heat source to hit that sublimation paper, or this is copy paper, the sublimation print that you made. You want to have the heat source hit that first, and then you're going to cover that with the protective paper, and you can move that over to the press. We're going to press this for 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 seconds. And then we will let that cool. So I'm going to grab my protective mat. This is the protective mat that is heat safe. It's going to protect my work surface, and I'm going to have that ready. So we're going to go ahead and press this for 45 seconds. And then I'm going to carefully release that, and I'm going to just kind of let that settle there for just a second. And you want to grab those heat safe gloves. You do not want to touch these blanks. They are metal. So be very careful. Heat safe gloves, or just make sure you have excess protective paper that you can just simply move that and transfer it over to your protective mat or your heat safe surface to let that cool. We are going to let this cool completely before we add our next step, which is that second press, because we want those inks to have cooled completely and settled. Now, once they are cooled, you can do the reveal, and we're going to see how those look. I'm going to take these off. You can see that there is ink transfer, so you do not want to reuse this paper or it could transfer to your future projects. So I'm just going to toss that, and then I can go ahead and reveal my backgrounds here. And I mentioned that typically when you are doing typical sublimation with a sublimation printer, it is not recommended to do a double press. However, we can sometimes break those rules and we can step outside the box and see what we can create. So here we have our background. It is a multicolor background, and we'll see in the final results how that affects our final press. So we're going to go ahead here and reveal this one. These turned out really super cool. Working with that gel press, if you don't have one, you might want to get one now after seeing all of this, but they're so fun to create with. It's hard to stop creating with those because every single pull you do can be very unique and interesting. And it's very difficult to create the same thing back to back. But I have seen some very talented artists out there who have created things. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fit these. I'm going to put this onto my background here. I'm going to secure it with heat tape. I want to kind of position these, and I may need to trim some of this down just a little bit depending on the size of your word. And then see how those are going to fit. I don't want them to overlap, because anything that's overlapping, I'm just going to kind of vary this, is going to press that way. So if a letter here is overlapping on this white paper, then it won't show up in the final print. Looks like I'm going to have enough space. I just want to make sure, yep, everything should be good. Double check that I have my letters going the correct way. So this is my E. That is not. Double check. Okay. I think that's wrong. So when I put this, R is correct. E needs to be flipped because I colored it. Then I moved it out of position. And then the A is good. And the D is good. Always good to double check. So my R, I'm going to go ahead and just secure that with just a tiny bit of tape. And then my E, now that it's going the correct way, I can again just add, kind of connect those together. My A, I don't want it to overlap that one. And then my final letter. And we will have a very unique bookmark. This one you could do straight up and down. So what I am going to do is I'm actually going to flip this over. Let's do it on here. So I have all the letters going the correct way. If I do it straight up and down, I'm going to line these up how I'd like it right now. This word can fit straight up and down. So I'm going to line that up. I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to just press those together so they're all in a line. And then I can go ahead and position this on here and see if I need a little bit more heat tape to secure it. Just a little bit. That's pretty big, but I'm going to cover that, make sure it's secure. Now this excess piece should be enough, but you do want to keep in mind, if you are doing the second press, this background can heat up and it will activate as a gas again. So you want to make sure that everything is protected. And I am very super careful with my heat press that I don't want it to get any sublimation ink. So I'm just going to make sure here you want your print on the top so you can see that print through there. So you have a layer of protective paper, you have your blank, you have your print on top, and then a layer of protective paper. I'm going to position this onto my press and make sure that everything is secured and covered, and so that any ink transferred is not going to get on my press. I'm going to press this for 45 seconds. And then once that is done, I'm going to carefully release that press, and I'm just going to let it sit there for just a second and let those gases settle. And then once that is done, it doesn't take long at all. I'm going to move this to my press. Now, did you catch what I missed? Because as I was waiting for that to press, I completely missed adding the lightning medium into the paint to make it lighter. So I was going to do that with the blue and totally spaced it. So I guess you're going to have to watch a future Artesprix YouTube video on using the lightning medium. So make sure to stay tuned, make sure to subscribe and like. And then you do want to be careful with this. I am going to go ahead and take this. It is still hot. So I can't really tell that the colors changed that much. I'd have to go back and I'd have to compare the photos. The colors really didn't change that much. What I am going to do, I'm going to grab my heat gloves so I can just do this right away. And then I'm going to kind of grab a little pokey tool. So I'm going to grab this just so I can lift up this heat tape and we can do the reveal right here without having to wait. So I'm just going to reveal that. And we have our coloring in there. And then this one. And I don't want to scratch the blank, so I'm just trying to lift up on the tape and not burn my fingers. So each one is a little bit different in the coloring and the final outcome. So I'll go ahead, just move these over here. I'm gonna let those cool off. And then here's a glimpse at these finished bookmarks. You can create with them. You can add a little bit, break those rules a little bit, test with it, have some fun with it. You can see how you can add different aspects to it with using the Artesprix Sublimation Coloring Books. Make sure to check out the links below this video for all of the supplies that I used in this video, as well as additional resources. And make sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications. Check out the Artesprix blog for additional inspiration as well. Thanks for watching and have a great day.